listed as not being present, but actually was present. Because I had some motions and stuff in here, so anyway, it's just a typo. If I could be listed as present.
Well, we weren't using a Ouija board?
I was there.
All righty.
I was there. Promise.
All right, are there any additional additions, corrections, or deletions to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, do we have a motion for their adoption as submitted?
Motion to adopt.
Second. Motion to adopt Cooper, second Carter. All in favor of adoption?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Very good. We have meeting minutes. Looking at our agenda, we have no old business to conduct. Likewise, we have no new business or petitions to come in front of us. Moving to the consent agenda, which is where we ratify issues of minor work that were approved by city departments and administration under the minor work provisions of the COA requirements in Article 10. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 8 COA applications electronically. All of the applications were sent to us for review. At this time, are there any board members that have any discussion, questions, or comments about any of these 7 COA applications as added to the consent agenda? I will have some. Let me get my.
Are these are all already finished? They're already done?
Many of them are already done, yes. It's going to be our duty to ratify them, or if there's discussion items. For example, I have a discussion item on COA 22-20. This would be the one for 1653 Northeast Madison. This is the parking lot immediately adjacent to the City Hall building. Mr. Angelo, for the benefit of the board, and I know that this has already been discussed somewhat, but can you go over the process by how city administration applies the major versus minor works clauses under Article 10 and how that plays with the historically appropriate fence on the front facade with the historically inappropriate gate on the south facade?
Which consent item is it?
This would be
It's not 20.
COA 22-20.
21.
Oh, okay. 20 is the shingle roof.
22-21.
Okay, I've got the incorrect case number in my digital files then.
It's on Northeast Madison.
1653 Northeast Madison.
Yes.
On when we're making a decision as far as whether something's minor work, major work, or maintenance work, and the LDR under section 10.11.4 is for routine maintenance. So we basically go there's 19 lines there that we use to kind of see if it falls in that stuff, like adding caulking or that around a window, painting some of the same colors. Those are just maintenance items, kind of keeping up with the character of the building. Those would fall under maintenance. 10.11.5 will list your minor. Those are usually where a lot of our consent agenda items come from. It's putting up a fence, usually at the back of a piece of property, changing out a roof with like material or similar colors that is consistent with the area. You can go with metal roofing as long as it's consistent with coloring in the same area. And then, but that is 10.11.5 in sections 1 through 24. So those kind of guide us as far as which ones we use. And then as far as major work, we look at 10.11.6. So basically anything that doesn't fall in the first 2 categories is going to fall in the 3rd category. Is going to be major work. That's going to come from the board and to be looked at. And as far as the one here on Northeast Madison, when we looked at it, originally and talked to the petitioner, it was gonna be the same fence, which wound up being the same fence and everything as the one over on, I think it's Hernando Street. And then, but the gate wound up being different. And I know they're not finished 100%, so I don't know if they're gonna, I need to reach back out to them and see if they're gonna make the gate look consistent by putting like a facade or something on the front of it to make it look consistent with it and just open manually, or if they're gonna leave it like it is. And but that's something I'm going to reach out to them to kind of see where they're going with that.
Okay, under 10.11.6, those major projects that require a in-person petition for a COA, item number 15 specifically says construction of fences or walls within the front yard of a property always has to come before
Okay.
the board.
Is that the front yard or would that be the side?
Kind of the side. You know,
Well, it would be the front and the side. That's the
Could be.
old, I believe the old Streety's Hardware, later the People's Hardware building. So
Yeah.
its front facade would open up, or its
We
front,
looked at it as the side of the building. That's kind of how we looked at it.
but in general, and you know, these are the growing pains we're gonna experience. I mean, we've been through a number of administrators, and if you look around the board, there's only a couple of us here that have been around more than a year. But in the future, under the major works clauses, within the historic district, subsection 15, construction of fences or walls in front yard, whether that be a front or side, it is on 3 different sides
Right.
of a parcel. The only side it's not on is where it's up against the existing wall of the old J.C. Penney building now. Was that Decker's Law Firm, I think? So something like that would probably want to come before the board. Now, I'm not trying to single out city administrators or yourself. I'm just thinking about the precedent for the future.
Right.
If we get into a situation where, you know, someone can come and say, well, the city is, you know, injudiciously applying the LDRs, landowner to landowner, you know, they let one owner skate on this item 15, why are we being held to it?
Right. No, I see that, and that's,
Consistency is the hobgoblin of government.
right, and that's the feedback that I would like, and that, you know, from the board, you know, what do y'all want in front of the board? And that, the only way we learn is as we go, and that, I'm all for that. So definitely, if y'all see anything that you would rather see in front of the board, let me know, and that's what we want to do.
Are there any other points of discussion regarding COA 22-20? Now, we're not individually approving or disapproving any of these. They're on the consent agenda. We'll ratify the entire consent agenda at the end, but are there any particular discussions anyone would like to have in reference to COA 22-21 on Madison Street? Okay, seeing none, I do have one other issue. And again, this is just growing pains in interpreting the LDRs. Certificate of appropriateness, petition 22-24. This one being for 152 Southeast Hernando. Again, it's a consent agenda item, so you know this has already been provisionally approved. Work has already been done. But if you look at page 5 and page 8 of the packet that was distributed to members of the board, you'll see that structure originally had the stamped and impressed tin tile original roofing material, which it turns out was removed before they put up the current red enamelized Galvalume. Now the Galvalume, as you've mentioned, that is a perfectly appropriate material for using. However, because under subsection 12 of Article 10.11.6, categorizing the major works that would come before this board, replacement of architectural details where there will be a change in design or material from the original or existing details. Probably for the sake of consistency and maybe not so much for, you know, this owner per se, those are the sorts of things that should probably come before this board in person just so that we can equally apply the LDRs across the entire citizenry. The recommendation that I would like to think this board would have made in that regard is, yes, the gal balloon in that color is historically, appropriate. However, can you put the purlins on over the existing tin shingle? It can be restored back to its original condition later, but complete removal of that defining historic characteristic of that structure goes against some of the historical preservation standards and guidelines that we reference in Article 10.
Right.
So that would have been something that probably should have come before the board first traded.
I think the board has set precedents for that already in several of our approvals.
Well, I believe the old A.J. Black building down there next to the courthouse that has the sculpture of the bull in front of it, I believe when they wanted to re-roof that structure, it did come before the board. But like I said, we're experiencing growing pains. We're all trying to find our footing as the board and the administration and, even the location where we're doing our jobs now here in the city. Everything has been in a state of flux for a while, so we'll have a few more of these growing pains, but in general, just to equally apply the LDRs across all the citizenry, of the 7 items, I think 5 of them were adjudicated correctly. The vast majority were adjudicated correctly by city administration, but I think those 2 probably should have come to us in open public hearing. That's about all I have, which, that's still pretty good.
I have, as far as talking about perhaps future workshops, and this specific consent agenda item, I think maybe we should, because the historic district is currently peppered with buildings with this roof,
Yes.
and insurance is becoming harder and harder to get with these, 90, 100-year-old roofs. I think we should probably start to try to develop some sort of almost like a cookie cutter solution, as more and more of these roofs have to be replaced or have to be covered or have to be something in order for people to be able to occupy the spaces in an insured fashion.
Well, I'm sure it ended up costing the owner a lot more to have the original one completely removed and reframed and a new one put on than it would have to, leave the original historic fabric in place and do a roof over on it.
I've seen some of these where they're loose and it's a bit dangerous to walk on them. So
Yeah, well, they
I
might
don't know if
have
that may have,
rod decking, things like that nature. They've got to get it under there and fix.
sure,
Well, this style of roof doesn't have decking.
right.
Yeah, it wouldn't have decking back then,
It's straight onto purlins.
but they still might have issues with, like you said, just not solid.
But of course, that is the sort of thing that if this was brought before the board, we would have been able to kind of find out if there was a need to remove it,
Yeah.
something like that. But I think we'll probably keep seeing these roofs pop up.
Yeah, it seems like we've had 2 or 3 of them come up.
Because insurance is near impossible to get these days without practically a brand new roof, so.
Yeah, mine's lasted 116 years and I'm terrified when the insurance man comes and drives down my street.
That's on the record.
Oh yeah, I know it is. I'll say it in public too.
Yeah, that is a concern of the insurance companies now. When people are buying houses and they're more than 15 years old, they look real hard at that.
Sure. And while conserving the historic nature or style, I also would want to be a friend to people trying to live or work in the area. Some things
For the standing seam,
some things don't last forever, historic or not.
yeah.
So.
So that, I don't know what they put on that building over here.
Which one?
The one that we approved.
I don't know that they've done it yet. I don't know that they've done it yet.
They haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
But I mean, there is a difference between standing seam and the ones they fasten down with the little screws and rubber grommets. Those are not terribly attractive. So, I mean, like you say, maybe we should have some consistency in, what we approve and maybe even the colors. Like on this one here, they had a sheet,
Any other discussion in regards to any of the 7 petitions for certificates of appropriateness that were provisionally approved by city administration and the Department of Growth Management?
Nope.
There being none at this time, do we have a motion to ratify all 7 of the provisional COAs that were issued by the Department of Growth Management?
Motion to ratify all 7 of the provisional COAs that were issued by the Department of Growth Management.
Second.
Motion motion Carter, second Cooper. You can have your seat. I know you gotta take notes, so.
Yeah. I was making a mental note.
There being no further discussion on these items, there being a motion, there being a second, Mr. Angelo, will you please call the yeas and the nays?
Yes. Ms. McCollum?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yeah.
Mr. Mann?
Yes.
Mr. Carter?
Yes.
And Mr. Lyder?
Yay. Consent agenda consisting of 7 certificate of appropriateness applications has been approved. There being no additional items, let's move to workshop. Again, we have the housekeeping business of readopting the rules for order and business of the Historic Preservation Agency. This will be separate from the Board of Adjustment and the Planning and Zoning Board. Do we have a motion to continue operating under the same rules that the previous chair had crafted for us?
I motion that we continue under the same.
We have a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. That's going to be Cooper and Carter.
Yep.
Mr. Angelo, will you please call the yeas and the nays?
Ms. McCollum?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Mann?
Yes.
Mr. Carter?
Yes.
And Mr. Lyder?
Yay. Very good. We have rules for all 3 of our organizations now. That is very nice.
Huzzah.
Huzzah. Similar to the previous 2 meetings that we convened as part of this evening's festivities, I remind everyone that if you have things you would like to see, or like to hear, or like to present under future workshop items, it sounds as if Mr. Carter would like us perhaps to go through the Secretary of the Interior standards and guidelines, perhaps as it relates to defining architectural characteristics. Or we can have a further in-depth discussion about section 10.11.6, 10.11.5, and 10.11.4, which would be the repair items, the minor items, and the major items as it pertains to certificate of appropriateness. That seems to be something that we can discuss in workshop for the benefit of the board. Any other ideas for things that we can put together quarterly as workshop discussion items for the board?
Just as an addition to what we were already talking about there, I think maybe, and I'm not sure who would do this, but perhaps some sort of an authority on the state of insurance when it comes to these roofs and things like that, what they're looking for, why they're consistently trying to effectively phase them out. If there's things that can be done that they're aware of, things that maybe have been done in other places, and just a little bit more to do with it. Because I just keep hearing it constantly. Working in my field, people with building things, all that kind of stuff. There's always new and interesting things the last couple of years with roofs. In this case, it's very relevant because it's has a lot to do with the look. I mean, most of the stuff that comes before the Historic Preservation Board since I've been on it is roofs. So,
Well, I think insurance companies are concerned with old roofs because they leak.
oh, sure, I get it.
Mr. Angelo, how close of a working relationship do we have with the representative of the entity that insures the city of Lake City?
I would look to a certain seat.
Perhaps having the city's insurance representative, no doubt we're probably one of the big accounts for them. If that individual might be willing to come in and, as Mr. Carter said, kind of describe the current state of the insurance community as it relates to historic structures and, non-conforming architectural characteristics in a changing insurance world, maybe that would be beneficial for us.
No doubt boring.
Oh, definitely boring. You think historic preservation is boring, you should see it when you mix in an insurance agent. Any other ideas for workshop items? As a reminder, when you send them along, please make sure that Mr. Angelo, the vice chair, and myself are addressed on those email communications, and we'll make sure that we can work them into a upcoming board meeting.
Well, can we make a motion to move forward with that? I mean, at least we can get one on the agenda.
Well, you don't need a motion to put something into workshop, but we can take some of Mr. Carter's ideas about the COA process and the standards and guidelines that are referenced in terms of historic architectural characteristics. We can craft something to that effect, possibly as early as next month. That would involve me spending some time in Robert's office and pulling some documents together, putting some exhibits for the board. Kind of like we did when we discussed Article 10 about 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah, I have those notes. Good.
But if it's the acclaim of the board that that's what they want to see for the next workshop for HPA, Mr. Angelo and I will go ahead and start putting those pieces out on the chessboard and try to make that happen for you next month. Anything else for the good of the board? Hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn, and Miss Mary snuck in with the second. Good job. All right, all in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
She's ready.
All opposed?
Second.
All right, we are out of here. Cut the feed.
What is the date of the next meeting?